Dude, we are 20 episodes into the podcast.
Yeah, welcome to episode 20, everybody.
We've been like 20, you're like, oh, that doesn't seem like a lot, but that is 20 weeks. Like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize we've been doing this for that long.
Well, and even as we're going through and we're planning so many episodes ahead, there's so many things that I want to cover. And I'm like, how are we going to get to all of this?
Yeah.
Like, it's interesting once you get into the groove and all these like different things. And that's really what we're here about at Talk About Tatooine, is to actually take multiple fandoms and merge them together. Because weirdly enough, we found that interacting with the wonderful nerddom population is that most people have these same interests. Most people like Star Wars, who also like Warhammer, who also like board games, who also like sci-fi and fantasy entertainment. Like, all of those are linked, and we're like, wait, why is there not a podcast that covers all of this? And so then we made this, and then 20 episodes later, here we are. So very happy to have you guys all here.
Indeed. Welcome to Talk About Tatooine. I'm Andrew.
I'm Nathan.
And we are twin brothers here to bring you what's new in nerddom and give colorful commentary on our favorite subjects. Welcome to our cantina. Grab a drink and settle in as we set course for realities beyond our own. And I'm out of coffee.
I am almost through my second Dr. Pepper.
I
Diet Dr. Pepper. I'm not a monster.
Some people they're like, oh, diet soda is going to kill you. And it's like, well, at the rate I drink it, for sure it's going to kill me. 100%.
Well, technically everyone who breathes oxygen also dies. So like correlation does not equal causation. So bug off. I will go down fighting on that one. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment.
Dumb excuse.
It is pretty dumb.
That's like, I'm not even, you know what? We don't have time to get in how stupid that is.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you guys are watching on YouTube, and make sure to follow the podcast on Anchor and Spotify or wherever you guys get your podcasts. Today, we're going to be discussing Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 8, Truth and Consequences. But first, let's get into our starter questions. Also, stick around until the end because we've got some news covering gaming, Star Wars, and some other things as well. All right, what have you been watching or reading recently?
So we added reading because I also read books. Despite the evidence in our podcast and when I have said I can't read, I can't. Well, actually, I do audiobooks, so there's still technically no evidence that I know how to read.
I can't read.
My wife and I are actually reading The Fellowship of the Ring, a hardcover, and I'm reading it out loud with her.
Nice.
As like a pre-bedtime ritual.
Very cool.
But on my own, I've been reading through Star Wars The High Republic Convergence. This is a pre-Nihil book, but it's still in the High Republic era, so it's before Starlight Beacon and things like that, and it's I can't say it's as interesting as the other things. This specific book talks about the conflicts between two planets that are actually tidally locked, called Iram and Arano, and then they also share a moon. I think it's really interesting, but it's hard to see how the conflict affects the galaxy at large. I think we're getting there, but yeah, it's fun.
Excellent. I am actually almost through Wraith Squadron, a book about New Republic commandos taking on the forces of Warlord Zinj. Really cool so far. Unfortunately, this is a Legends book, not canon. Yeah. So it's like, it might not be something we bring up in the future, but remember, we do have the Rogue Squadron project coming up sometime in the future as well, maybe in the next 2 years. So some of this information might come to light. I'm really hoping it does. Who knows? But yeah.
For sure. Yeah, Warlord Zinj is one of the captains of one of the very few super star destroyers roaming the galaxy, so his story is very interesting. And he calls himself a warlord because as soon as the Empire disintegrates, he's not part of the Empire anymore. He basically does his own thing. It's super fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, what games have you been playing?
I have been playing a lot of Marvel Snap. I've been really, really just grinding that out, just trying to get new characters and stuff. I'm finally at a high enough collection level where I feel like I'm getting more cards. And so like more deck options are playing. I play a Mega Move deck, which I think I've mentioned in a previous episode as well. I kind of had this idea for testing different deck compositions on stream and then like
Mhm.
doing a statistical analysis on those to see kind of like what's best right now and kind of like do a little bit of like a meta review. That's going to take a little bit of time in planning, so I haven't quite gotten into that yet. I am really wanting to get into some more like Call of Duty. I just haven't been around to play as much as I would like to. And I know you and our buddy have been getting into it quite a bit. I can see you guys chatting on Discord and absolutely tearing it up. And I've mostly just been kind of getting other projects done. So I'm hoping to get back onto that as well.
Yeah, I've noticed that the Call of Duty mobile community has gotten a lot more competitive recently, which means people are hooking up their controllers to their phone, and it's really upping the quality of gameplay. Like sometimes I'll find that I actually die or die a
Yeah.
lot. And I'm like, this is good. This is like what I want to see. This is the level of competition I need out of this game. But along with that, I've also been playing Marvel Snap. The current season, which has been a sort of truncated season, is almost done. And it's been totally focused around the release of Quantum Mania, with different variants of Ant-Man and Wasp. The premium season reward was MODOK, two different variants of him, which I did end up buying because I really like the season pass levels. But I'm not a huge fan of MODOK. I've never really liked discard decks, so his ability is on reveal. You just discard your whole hand, which you're like, why does that matter? There's actually a lot of cards that really benefit when you discard your own stuff.
And they synergize so well with MODOK. It's just like you're like, oh, he just vaped your entire hand, and then you just see all of these effects start like playing themselves out, and you're like, oh my gosh, he beat me by like 40 points. And it's kind of annoying, but I don't have some of those key cards to make those decks work yet. So
Yeah.
I can't play them myself yet.
Yeah, he synergizes really well with Swarm, Dracula, Morbius, Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Some really good stuff. I've been trying to make a deck with those cards plus Hela, because Hela brings back all of the cards you've discarded back onto the field, but it's hard to get all of that to work because you play MODOK turn 5 and then you discard Hela, so you can't play her. So it's a little weird. You kind of have to go
It
two
is a
different
little weird.
routes, either MODOK or Hela, or there's have other cards that I just don't have yet.
Have you had Null played against you?
I actually just won a match while I was walking Barney this morning where a guy played Null turn 5 because he played. So it's a 6-cost card, so you shouldn't be able to play it turn 5 unless you either get more energy or reduce its cost somehow. Well, this person played Wave, so Null only cost 4, and they played it on turn 5. And I was like, this is great. So they played Null on turn 5, and I had Rogue in my hand. And so they played it, and they played it on Onslaught's Citadel. So Null is an ongoing card that has the combined power of all cards destroyed this game. So if you're playing a deck that destroys your own cards, Null gets crazy powerful. And then they played it on Onslaught's Citadel, which doubles the effects of ongoing cards. So this was like a 20 plus power card. It was huge. So turn 6, I play Rogue, and they don't even let the turn resolve, and they retreated.
They're like, screw you, buddy.
Yeah. I was like,
I'm
this
going to
is
take
perfect.
that power. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if you play Rogue, does it copy the benefits of Null and Citadel or Onslaught Citadel?
Yeah, it steals that effect. So it basically takes that print and applies it to Rogue, and then takes it away from the other one. I have a couple decks where if Rogue is played against me early on, I just immediately retreat because it ruins my whole strategy. So I try to hide. I try to hide some of my better ongoing cards, maybe behind like Invisible Woman or something, or I even save those lower cost ongoing effects that really like bolster the rest of my army, and I play them turn 6. So
yeah, as
just so they
like
can't
last minute as possible for sure.
Yeah, just so they can't get their hands on it.
What kind of hobby work have you been getting done?
Yeah, that's a good point. I kind of like in our last episode, so we're recording this on March 3rd. Like I said, I basically haven't gotten anything done, and you probably wondered, well, my last episode, it's because like part of the reason is because like we had a death in the family, so our game that we had coming up has now been canceled, and we need to reschedule it. But also, I found that I've been going to the doctor for some pretty severe pain in my foot, and I found that out that I've been walking on a broken foot for about 6 months. And like part of that is my fault because I didn't get it taken care of sooner. But it also took me about a month and a half to 2 months to like get approved for an MRI because American health insurance totally blows. I don't really know if that's different for other countries, so I shouldn't say that. But I know
No,
I'm
it
just not a
does.
fan of what I have. And so it's really hard to do things like between basic things like cooking, walking the dog, and cleaning takes so much more time, and I'm just exhausted by the end. I find myself just crashing on the couch and not really at my desk, ready to work on hobby stuff. So I'm really struggling to basically get to do the things I love, and like my stamina has like hit an all time low because I it's actually a stress fracture because I was walking so much. So I'm basically not exercising either. Um, yeah, so physically I'm not really in a great place. I'm just trying to pursue health in the best ways I can, but it's hard. So
Absolutely. Well, as somebody who works with like I market myself as the trainer who works with broken people because that's most of what my clientele are. I'm excited for you because a lot of the times these sort of events are good reminders to get back and really rehab well. And so I'm excited for you to make a really strong recovery. As long as you take it seriously, which I will make sure you do, or I will be mad at you.
well, I appreciate it.
Because Lord knows the rest of our family doesn't listen to advice when I give it because no one really wants to hear advice coming from your own family. It's a weird dynamic, but that's, I feel like, pretty common. But you sort of listen.
What does it say in the Bible where it's like Jesus grew up in Bethlehem and that's the place where they just straight up just didn't believe him?
Yeah. Get
like,
out of here.
It's a prophet is not accepted in his own town. Something like that. That's a paraphrase. Which is a foreshadowing of what we're going to talk about later in the episode.
A little bit.
I'm going to convert you. No, I'm not. We're going to talk about.
Don't be creepy about it.
No, we're going to talk weird. We're going to talk about narrative things in the Bible that show up in this week's episode of The Bad Batch and Star Wars in general.
Absolutely. This is a little bit different than a hobby, but hopefully something people will get into because, as I mentioned earlier in quite a few of our episodes, this is a multi-hobby podcast, like multi-fandom, multi-findom. This is a multi-interest podcast. And something that I've been doing a lot recently is I actually just got a smoker. And so I've been working with like different meats, cheeses, and other accoutrements. And some of it to some success, some of it not. My last attempt at making chicken wings was actually a little bit subpar. The ones you guys had turned out really better than my last attempt. So I'm looking forward to trying that again and dialing in the cook time. But I also tried some smoked cream cheese, some everything bagel, smoked cream cheese. So I took some cream cheese, basically patted some seasoning into it, and then smoked it. I didn't do it for long enough, so it was only smoky on the outer layer. I really liked it, but it wasn't quite as much of a hit as I wanted it to be. And then I also roasted some garlic in the smoker, and that actually turned out really tasty. But you have to keep in mind that raw garlic is a lot stronger than cooked garlic. So I did a whole head of garlic and like mixed it in with some sour cream and some salt, pepper, and green onion. And it was really good, but it just didn't make that much. So I'm hoping to do maybe a bigger batch sometime and just buy a whole Costco bag of garlic and just smoke the whole thing and just go crazy. So, but it was awesome. You literally like once it cooled down, because I just put a little bit of olive oil, like cut off all the tops, put a little bit of olive oil and salt on it. And when it was done and not hot enough where it wouldn't burn my fingers, because I definitely did that a little bit, you could turn it over and just squeeze it and the garlic would just come straight out. It was amazing.
That sounds really good.
So good. My breath smelled so bad, but it was all right. So, but yeah, that's kind of what I've been working on, other than like doing some painting and stuff. But I love to cook and bake. And so sometimes I have time for that. Sometimes I don't.
I'm not as big a fan of cooking and baking. Because I'm really self-conscious that what I'm going to make, people aren't going to like. And if I put all the work into it and it's like, it comes out like I put too much salt in it or something, that's an issue. I really have trouble evening out the seasonings. And so if it turns out bad, I'm like, well, that wasn't like really worth the effort. Although my knife skills have been getting a lot better.
Excellent. Knife skills are like the safest thing you can do in the kitchen, is if you know how to use a knife and it's sharp. And this is coming from a guy who has almost sliced his thumb off twice in his life from bad knife skills as a child. So have good knife skills and have sharp knives. A sharp knife is a safe knife.
And
Anyways,
don't be a child.
all right, guys, this is your official warning for spoiler warning for The Bad Batch episode 8. We're getting into it.
Ratings 1 out of 10. I gave this one an 8 out of 10. It's basically part 2 of the previous episode, The Clone Conspiracy, and it kept the same level of intensity throughout, and I just really love that. The multi-episode arcs are really good. We saw that as a huge success point in the Clone Wars, and I hope they do more of that. I hope they feel like they have the freedom to make more episodes about a specific storyline and really keep that moving. I'm not a huge fan of how few episodes are in every season. I really wish they would expand on that. I'm not really sure why they're coming down to truncated seasons. Like, old seasons of the Clone Wars used to be like 20 episodes, and it's like, nah, dude, you're only getting 8. Even though we are going to get more than 8 episodes in this season, which is nice, but we only got 8 episodes of Andor, right?
Andor was a lot shorter. The first season of Bad Batch was 12 episodes. So they are much shorter, and considering Clone Wars had a lot of filler, if you're going to have filler episodes, it needs to be a longer season. Like,
yes,
you can't just like throw in all those extra episodes and not have them mean anything. But like, Clone Wars is essentially a storytelling saga. It's trying to tell as many stories as possible over the course of the Clone Wars while following that major story arc. So I get it. But Bad Batch, we're following a much smaller setting and characters. So it's like, in my opinion, I'm like, hey, the filler needs to make sense later, which we've talked about in some of our theories. But I'm kind of hoping we get a longer season. Like, I thought 12 episodes was too short. Aren't we on, like, by the time this recording comes out, aren't we on like episode 12 already?
I think we're on episode 11.
Yeah, but we're definitely not at the season finale already, because there's no way they're going to wrap this season up with one episode. I realize I wrote down notes for my rating 1 out of 10, but I actually didn't write down a 1 out of 10 score. I love multi-episode arcs. I think they're super compelling, just because the cliffhanger we had on the last episode, the whole like electric cyanide pill, I thought that was amazing. And there's immediate suspense going into this next one. I would actually have to say, for this next one, 8 out of 10 as well. This is probably my favorite. These are going to be my favorite stories from Bad Batch so far.
Yeah, and I really hope they keep up this pace in this of what we've seen in episode 7 moving onward. If we were to go back to more filler, which we sort of do when they like trying to mine Ipsium and stuff, but that filler mattered. It had strong ramifications, like it was clearly building the character of the Bad Batch. But that's for another episode. We're not going to get to that yet.
We're almost there.
We're almost there.
Go ahead and share us your favorite moments from this episode.
This one is awesome because we actually get to see the Bad Batch see their purpose. Their purpose is fighting the Empire. They've really been running away from that fate, which I'll talk a little bit in more detail later. Right now, they're just meandering. They're not really doing anything. Like, Omega like really wants to like fight the Empire. She sees how evil it is, but like Hunter, Wrecker, and Tech are just like, who the heck cares? Like, we're just putzing along, just trying to.
They're in self-preservation mode, honestly.
Yeah, they're just trying to keep their head down, and which I understand, and I can't say that I wouldn't do the same exact thing in their situation, but also just like, don't you want to fight? Don't you guys want? You guys firsthand have seen this evil in the galaxy, and more than most people and citizens in that galaxy, you have the power to do something. You have the skill set to fight it. I really wish they would just really clamp onto that and move forward with that. And we see Echo do exactly that.
I really enjoyed Rex's involvement in this episode. Him and Echo have such a strong bond from the Clone Wars. And I'm really excited to see what kind of trouble they're going to get up to. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
they're going to really start stirring the pot. That's going to lead us kind of right into our theories. I mean, we've been kind of talking about the last few episodes, like a clone rebellion. It's going to happen. Like, there's no way it's not going to happen. So, I don't really, since we're getting really deeper into this season, I don't really have any new theories. I'm just kind of waiting to see if ours play out. I haven't really gotten anything right yet. So, like, my main theory was like, I made series wide theories, and you actually said like the Bad Batch are going to start going their separate ways. For me, I was like, hey, at the end of the series, maybe not this season, but we're going to start seeing people like die off. I think Disney's going to really like make that happen. But I've made a lot of like kind of mini theories so far, but man, I've scored 0 so far. Also, we haven't seen Crosshair in now 5 episodes, because I
Was
said
the
for the
last
last
time?
time, and yeah, I said for the last time, but that was the episode previously, because we thought Crosshair was the sniper at first. I shouldn't say we. You thought it was. I was like, I totally knew right away. Crosshair does not miss his shots. And I
It's
was just
clearly
being
an
kind of,
imposter.
yeah, I was just being kind of an arrogant dickbag, but that's fine. You guys can
That's not
call
what
me
I'm
that
here
in the
for.
comments. Exactly. So I was kind of interested how, like, I'm waiting for Crosshair to come back. I'm like, he's going to come back in dramatic fashion, and I'm like, where is he? Where is he? Where's it going to happen?
I don't really have any new theories at this point either, other than I think we're going to see a full scale clone rebellion. I don't think it's going to be like a Cold War. I don't think it's going to be a Cold War type of espionage thing. It may start that way, but I think it is going to really boil over into a full conflict. And
Yes.
this is where we're going to see the final fate of the clones, for better or for worse.
One thing I'm kind of excited to see, and you guys know I'm a huge like weapons buff. Like, if I had to be, I love all the weapons and ships and explosives and cool gadgets and stuff from Star Wars. I'm excited to see the transition from all of like the clone armaments to the Imperial armaments. So, for example, the ATTE, the All-Terrain Tactical Enforcer. We see this 6-legged tank essentially in a ton of the Clone Wars, actually a few episodes of the Bad Batch as well, which we already know is going to eventually be replaced by the ATTE, All-Terrain Troop.
ATAT.
Sorry, ATAT, sorry. All-Terrain Assault Transport. My bad. I'm getting all of my different AT acronyms mixed up. Anyways, I'm excited to see how they're going to transfer all these over. So, in one of I'm gonna spoil one of the shorts that I'm going to be doing, because the V-wing, which is the starfighter we see being flown by clone pilots, is actually the precursor to the TIE fighter. I found that out the other day, and I'm actually going to be doing a short covering and a short series covering all of the new Imperial TIE fighters, because those are birthed from Republic ingenuity, and they're taken to a new level and a new purpose with the Empire. And I'm really hoping we see some more of that. And that will come across in, how the Empire uses their weapons, how they use their vehicles, their ships. We're going to eventually see the transition from Venator class ship to the Imperial Star Destroyer. Like, that's going to be a super cool transition. Maybe it'll happen in the Bad Batch. I don't see why not, because they still reference the Venator. They reference the Venator class ship like a billion times in these 2 episodes, because Admiral Rampart's Venator fleet was the one that bombed Camino and just turned it into paste essentially. So I'm really excited to see how they're going to transition the military, because guys, at the end of this episode, like, the bill gets passed. The stormtrooper bill passes through. I loved the Emperor showing up in that episode. That was so cool.
How thrilling was that?
So I'm super excited to see all of that. We're going to see these things happen, like, and it just kind of shows in the beginning stages the futility of fighting the Empire, because the Emperor gets his way. He totally does. He's like, if you do this, I'm going to do this. If you do this other thing, I'm still going to end up making my results happen, because you guys are an idiot and I'm the most powerful Sith Lord in 1,000 years. Like, I'm so excited. So it's going to be great.
Well, I mean, yeah, it really just it puts a it really shows the scale of power that they're dealing with the Emperor himself, because they are able to outsmart Admiral Rampart. I wouldn't say no problem. They had to work pretty hard for it, but they did it. But then as soon as the Emperor comes on the screen, it's just they had no chance. It's like in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, when you are fighting the Inquisitors, like you're struggling through it and you're fighting the Inquisitors, but you eventually are victorious. But then Darth Vader shows up, and all you can do is barely escape with your life.
He's really good at killing people, as we have
Yes.
seen in many forms already.
Yeah, and I mean, we see the same thing in Star Wars Rebels. Every time they've gone against Vader, they barely eke out with their life. And I mean, at one point, Darth Vader gets a Sith temple dropped on him and walks away from it.
He's so cool.
He's so cool. Oh my gosh. Anyway, I wanted to talk about my least favorite part of the Bad Batch so far. One of which is
Hit us with it.
Echo leaves.
Oh, that was hard.
It hurts to be right, I guess.
When that happened, I was like, dang it, Andrew. Like, why?
Like, Echo finds his place, and it's with his old commander, which is like, it's very emotional, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, this is where he needs to be, but what about the Bad Batch? I just couldn't. That's me.
All right, Gamorrean.
Hey there, little piggy. Anyway. But we still see that the rest of the Bad Batch isn't really fully committed. However, it seems inevitable that at some point they will become fully committed rebels, but they seem to just be putzing around with Sid, and it's so frustrating. I hate Sid. She is a no-good extortionist, and I don't understand why the Batch even like puts up with her, because she does not care. It's like they clearly lack this purpose. Like we talked about the clones in the bar in the previous episode. They're like, our only purpose is to fight. That's what we were made for. It's like they clearly, somehow the Batch being of the same make, even just with a few mutations, they seem to lack that purpose, even though fighting the Empire would absolutely fill that kind of hole in their lives. It would be that defining quest that would be like the defining quest that will set the trajectory of their story for years to come, yet they avoid it. In Andor, we actually see this mirrored very closely, and that really mirrors the story of the prophet Jonah in the Old Testament of the Bible, the original OT. We see that Jonah is called to the city of Nineveh, and in the process of that, he actually runs away from that calling and lands right in the middle of Nineveh anyway. In this case, he isn't. In Andor's case, he isn't swallowed by a giant fish, but rather he is swallowed by the imperial judicial system. And when he is spat back out into the real world, he really commits to that calling. And we haven't seen that same sort of experience happen to the Bad Batch yet, where they are running away from this calling, because that's really what they're doing. They're avoiding this conflict as best as they can. They're just, like you said, they're just trying to survive. But something is going to happen, and something is going to change fundamentally with their purpose in life, to where they will finally commit, hopefully by the end of this season, in fighting the Empire, and that will be their singular goal.
I can't wait for all of that to happen. It's going to be really, really cool. That being said, that means most likely we will see a trauma to the Bad Batch to then essentially put them through the fire to get them to where they need to be. So that's going to be interesting, and where they at. And maybe Echo leaving is that trauma. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
We've got many more episodes to talk about after this, and so I don't want to go into too much, but yeah, absolutely. I think the worst part about this episode was really that something tragic happened to the squad and Echo left. Other than that, I didn't have anything about the episode that I was like, oh, that was stupid. It was like, oh, that bummed me out. Mm-hmm. And really, that's not I hated it. It's more of I have an emotional attachment to this character. I like this character, and I was sad to see him go.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's hop into our next segment. Let's talk about some news from the HoloNet. we've got some fun stuff coming down the wire here, guys. For our primary segment, we were talking about Bad Batch. We're going to hop into some Warhammer news as well. According to fandomwire.com, Henry Cavill has made several extremely positive statements toward his new role in bringing Warhammer 40K to life. I'm really, really excited about this. Not only does he claim that this is a great choice for his career, he also states, for 30 years, I have dreamt of seeing a Warhammer universe in live action. Now, after 22 years of experience in this industry, I finally feel that I have the skill set and experience to guide a Warhammer cinematic universe into life.
That's what we want to hear.
Oh, it's going to be so good. It's going to be so freaking good. You need somebody that's that passionate about this and he's the perfect mix of, like, everyone loves Henry Cavill in The Witcher, in Superman, and everything he does, and now we're getting his lovability into a universe that has not gotten the recognition on the live action screen that we are so desperate for. And now it's going to happen. And with him, he's like, hey, I'm going to make sure this happen. Because back on The Witcher, he criticized The Witcher because he was like, this is not as lore accurate as I want it to be. And so if he's going to bring that kind of energy to Warhammer, I am going to lose my mind with joy. It is going to be so great. I'm just, thank you, Lord, for Henry. He is a very, very nice looking man and very, very passionate about this project. Thank you. Amen. It's going to be fantastic. So,
well, I mean, it really shows us that, like, creativity in Hollywood is not dead.
We also got a bit of Games Workshop news as well. Also, they're hinting that there are some new plastic infantry models in production. And this was after they revealed another Horus Heresy Marine unit, the Legion Despoiler Squad. So they have some new upgrade bits for those units. I don't play the Horus Heresy because the Horus Heresy is, not that I have anything against it. I actually think that's super cool. I love the book series. It's amazing. It's just not a version of 40K that I play because it's technically 30K, but it's, from my understanding, it's the same game, just with a different skin slightly. It's just 10,000 years in the past, which for them really isn't that much because, the whole, hey, we're not allowed to invent new technologies thing. So they just kind of do the same thing for 10,000 years. But I'm pretty excited about it. I think eventually I would love to get into the Horus Heresy as a miniature series because I love the art style of especially a lot of their vehicles. I think they just take the scale of 40K really seriously and they just make some really, really cool looking tanks. And these things they're titanic. They really are. They're absolute killing machines, and by the time we get to 40K, these machines are so special and so rare because they just would get in these dogfights where they would just destroy each other. And so when they come around to having these weapons, they're like, it's a big deal if they drive this like Horus Heresy era tank onto the field. They're like, we have to keep this thing alive at all costs, and also it's going to destroy everything in front of it, so make sure you're out of the way. Super excited for that. There's so much history and lore to get into, and I wish I had the money and the time to get into all of that. So,
and there you can field 30K vehicles in 40K. Like those data sheets are allowed, especially in Space Marines, which is awesome. After I couldn't get my hands on an Astraeus tank, I thought about getting a Sicarian tank, but then I decided against it because it was still going for too much. Whatever.
Plastic crack, everybody. It's still expensive.
Yeah. But like the Fire Raptors, like those are a vehicle that are shown in the Horus Heresy and almost kill the War Master at one point by the Iron Hands, which I thought was delicious irony.
That would have been awesome.
Just like don't roll over, even though their Primarch got beheaded on Nisfan 3. Please read the Horus Heresy books. They're so good.
I'll say that's not even a spoiler at this point because that book came out like 5 years ago or something. Actually, probably even more.
It's free game.
Yeah.
Well, because the story has been written for even longer than that before they made it into a book. Anyway, something I wanted to talk about in our news segment is the disturbing trend of game development where we basically aren't getting release dates anymore. We don't. I have a short list of games that have been either supposed to come out or they've just been like outright canceled, or they're supposed to like come out this year and they still don't have a due date or release date. And I think this is a really, I mean, yeah, like I said, this is a very disturbing trend in game development, and maybe that has to do with the complexity of game development now. It's so much more complex. There's so many more bugs they need to figure out. I mean, there's the meme going around of like, oh, this chicken is so raw that EA tried to publish it.
Got him.
I'm sort of paraphrasing that, but you get the point. Is that games they're taking longer to develop and release. They're more expensive, and when they do release, sometimes they're so full of bugs they're unplayable, which is really kind of a pickle because you want the studios to release a good product, and in some cases you're willing to be like, yeah, push it back, like don't release a bad product because that's going to ruin your player base. But also we see that like they're like, okay, well we're gonna push it back, and it's like, okay, awesome, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna push it back again, or we're just not going to tell you when it's going to be released. A couple examples. Return to Moria is supposed to come out this spring. It is March. Spring
You mean
happens,
like in a few months?
Yes. And which is, yeah, your face totally describes it, because they don't have like any alpha or beta gameplay released, and maybe they're keeping it behind closed doors. That's fine. But the fact that they don't have an actual release date made public, and it's supposed to come out in the period of either 1 to 3 months if they stick to that timeline, why haven't we seen anything? And this isn't the only example. Just right off the top of my head, I mean, I wrote down a half dozen games that had the same issue. Halo Infinite had constant delays in their game, to the point where co-op was released more than a year after the initial game was released. And I mean that's a really good example of how complicated game development has become, because things just are, it's so enormously complicated. There's probably a lot of bugs, but it's like what changed in the development of co-op that made it so hard.
And it's not like they're reinventing the wheel. It's something that they have done before and that the player base likes. So it's like, why not spend time in developing it instead of trying to slap it on at the end? Yeah, I get the frustration.
That's the thing, is some game studios, they are reinventing the wheel. They are coming up with their own game engines specifically for their game, or using new game engines in new ways. And maybe it's, they're not as familiar with like the latest version of the Unreal Engine, or they do just straight up make their own game engine like that. Those cause delays because you're constantly changing. Right now we're in this weird period where if you want to release a game on console, it's like, okay, well, are we going to release it on just the next generation of consoles? Like obviously PC is going to get it first. Are we going to downgrade it, this game, enough so that it can be played on the Switch? And if we do that, are we going to release it on the Xbox One X and the PS4? And there's just, it's exhausting, because it's like, I want to play these games, and I just want, it seems like a lot to ask for, to just say, when is this game coming out? We don't know when the Dark Tide console release is going to come out. It was supposed to already be out by now.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Space Marine 2 comes out this year, but we don't know when. So at this point, we're looking at probably closer to the end of the year, potentially even 2024 if they officially move it out. Jedi Survivor got moved out to this year, which I believe we do have a release date. I think it's sometime in April. Star Wars Eclipse has been all quiet on the Western Front since that banger of a trailer was released, and we don't know if it will ever get finished. Star Wars 1313 or 1313 was canceled quite a few years ago. That was a game that like a lot of people really excited for. That was kind of in the dead zone of when EA had the exclusive rights to Star Wars and they weren't doing anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also see that the Star Wars KOTOR remake has also been delayed with staffing issues as well.
Man. So a lot going on. Hopefully we get some more dates and stuff, and make sure you guys follow. We're going to be posting updates as soon as we get all that, and it's going to be a great time. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Everyone, every single one of you guys is amazing. We're super happy to have you guys here. Remember to leave a theory in the comments. Share pictures of your models on Twitter and Instagram. We'd love to see them, guys. We want to see what you guys are getting up to. Let's see them painted models, especially all the models I've been seeing of Angron on Twitter. Mwah, chef's kiss. So good. Shoot us an email at talkabouttatooine@gmail.com if you have any questions you want featured on air, and make sure to subscribe and like this video so all the algorithmic overlords will slice this video into the feeds of other like-minded folk. Until next time, may the Force be with you.
Close your eyes.